Hello. A little while ago, I did the story behind the song to each track on the first Skin album, and I had a number of people reach out to me and ask me if I would do the same thing for You Don't Love Me, which was a song recorded on not only the first Jagged Edge EP, but it also made it onto the album, which I'm happy to do. It's quite a long story because you have to understand the development of Jagged Edge. Jagged Edge was very much my band for many years. It went through about 10 different lineups. One lineup toured with Val Wow, um, but there were so many. It was like a revolving door of musicians, with me always trying to find the ultimate lineup. But the big catalyst in my career came when I was asked to play a show for UFO. That came about, it was a charity show, and Metal Hammer were the organizers and promoters. And the Bailey Brothers, who had their own show, they threw my name into the hat. So they played a big part in me sort of going up a different level. So at that time, I was managed by a guy called Joe Brown, and Joe Brown owned a company called Tasco, and which did all the PA and lights for various events, including Live Aid, and he got Rod Smallwood on board. And so for a while, I had Rod Smallwood and Joe Brown as my managers, and we put together this band under the name of Jagged Edge, and we actually went out on tour with Ozzy Osbourne on the No Rest for the Wicked tour, which featured Zakk Wylde on guitar, Geezer Butler on bass, Randy Castillo on drums. It was a phenomenal lineup. And because Joe Brown was providing the PA and lights for Ozzy Osbourne, he managed to get us onto the tour as support band. And in order for that to happen, he gave the PA and lights for free to Sharon Osbourne, which is another example of how this industry is very much about who you know, rather than what you know and what scales you can play. So we went out on this tour, and then it became very apparent that Jagged Edge, as an entity, was going to be charged for the PA and lights on the tour. Something which Rod Smallwood was not going to agree to. And so that fell out, those two entities fell out, and Rod basically said, you have a choice. You can either come with me, or you can stay with Joe, who's going to charge you for PA and lights to go out on tour. So it was a very easy decision. So I went with Rod. But we put this lineup together to go on tour with Ozzy Osbourne, and it was a moment that I'll never forget. Because we thought we were good and we had these songs and we were trying to get a record deal. But the first night of the tour was in Dublin, I believe. We did 2 shows in Ireland, and I think Dublin was the first one. And I remember when we arrived to the venue, it was almost like something from a movie. As I opened the doors to bring my equipment into the venue, they opened up with Bark at the Moon. I didn't know who Zakk Wylde was at that time. And I just stood there in absolute awe of this band who was playing one of my favorite songs, and it was just spectacular. And the thought that went through my head is exactly the same as the moment in Jaws, where Roy Schneider, I think it's Roy Schneider, says we're going to need a bigger boat. The same moment happened through my head, and the thought that went through my head was, I'm going to need a better band. Because the Ozzy Osbourne band was so far ahead of where we were. I just knew that this lineup of Jagged Edge was not good enough. And I was right. So for the rest of the tour, I would just go to sound checks and watch this band, watch Zakk, realize that I was not good enough as a guitar player. This guy was so far ahead of me. And it was a big moment for me to go, no matter how good I thought I was at that moment in time, I was not good enough. And the band that I had at the time was not good enough. So once the tour finished, we had a discussion, Rod and myself, about the future of the band, and it was kind of like, no, we need to rethink this. At the same time, Polydor Records approached Sanctuary and said, we have this singer and we know that you have this guitar player. What we would like to do is to put them together, and if it's agreeable, then we'll give you a record deal. So we hadn't met each other, we hadn't written any songs together or anything, and the singer was Matty Alfonsetti, and he came over with this manager, and there was a whole, he was a bit older than me, had a lot more experience, and he obviously had accrued some kind of debt with his manager. So some deal was struck where we had to give his ex-manager a whole bunch of money just to make this happen, which is just another example of how the music industry works. But we were basically offered this deal with no songs, no connection, no meeting, nothing at all. And so we were like thrown together in a studio and had to come up with a song and a demo, which we did. And it was a song that I'd written, but Matty sung it, we recorded it, Chris Tangrides produced it, and a deal was done. It was, Matty then moved to England. He fell under the Sanctuary, Rod Smallwood umbrella of management. And I was already managed by Sanctuary and Rod. So that was how it all put together. But of course, we had not written any songs. We'd not spent a single day with each other. So the big moment was, well, let's see what can come up. And so Matty was staying at the Columbia Hotel, which was a very famous rock and roll hotel in London. And I turned up with this guitar, which is quite an old guitar now, but pretty much every Jagged Edge song originated from this. And I remember going into, just in Matty's hotel room, and it was like, okay, we'll write something. And I had this little riff, which was basically... And the song just came, it was just one of those moments. Matty and myself, even though we're completely incompatible as human beings, we generally wrote well together. Clashes all the time, but the end product normally came out quite well. And the song just flowed. I played that riff and he just started singing the melody, which is more or less what you see on the record. And then for me, hearing that verse melody, I just instantly went to... It was just one of those moments where the song starts to write itself. I was hearing where the melody was going and it became completely clear in my head. I was just following a path. And so the bridge came from that, and then we went into the chorus. It was a very organic moment, and that was the thing that made everyone believe, okay, this is gonna work for a while. So we went in and we recorded the song as part of the first EP that we did. It was called Trouble. It was so well liked that we had to re-record it for the full album. I don't think we recorded it in full. I think we just added things to it. I remember Don Airey came in, and it was one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life. Don Airey is one of the greatest keyboard players ever to walk this planet, as well as being one of the greatest musicians. So he came to this Battery Studios, which is in North London, and we recorded the whole song. And he came in and he just set up his equipment, and he goes, "Oh, can I hear the song?" So we played the song through the speakers once, and he goes, "Okay, let's go for it." I didn't give him a single note. I didn't tell him a single chord or the key that we were playing it in. We just put the button in to record, and he recorded it from beginning to end in one go. And what you hear is his first attempt, flawless, just unbelievable. And to this day, it's probably the greatest thing I've ever seen in a recording studio, where you just mouth open, that someone possesses this talent. So that was a very memorable moment. The album was recorded at Rockfield Studios, but once again, the backing track was recorded at another studio. Not sure where that was. I remember Stuart Epps, who'd worked with Bad Company, or Paul Rodgers, did the initial backing tracks, and then I redid all the guitar parts and various bits and pieces. I think the solo goes a little bit like... something like that. I haven't played guitar for a week, but and at the time, Jagged Edge was generally hated by the press. No one really liked us. Mainly, I think one of the big reasons was our record company used to take out these full-page ads in Kerrang and Raw and Metal Hammer, and I think a lot of the journalists thought that we were being hyped beyond our what we deserved. But that song, I mean, it must be 30 years old now, has stood the test of time, and people still call out for it. And you know, I played it on the last tour that I did to huge reception, and so that's very much the story behind the song. The demise of Jagged Edge, that happened very, very quickly. I mean, we'd made this album. We had Jeff Glixman, the legendary producer. He was the original keyboard player in Kansas, and he did stuff with Gary Moore and Georgia Satellites, and he came in, he did a great job. One of the things that sort of signaled the demise was when we were mixing the album, and Matty and myself had been sent to Los Angeles to mix it, and a guy called Paul Larney, who'd done the Alana Miles album with Black Velvet, and Enough's Enough. And he mixed it, and we did one song, and then the singer basically went, okay, I'm going back to England now because I want to spend some time with my girlfriend. And in my head I was thinking, how could you possibly want to leave the mixing of your album to spend time with a girlfriend? This mentality is something that has always frustrated me over the years, because I take music very seriously. Like, from the moment I wake up in the morning, I generally think about music, and it occupies my mind the whole time. And the rest of life is something that sort of goes on, but most of my thoughts are geared around music, band, and stuff like that. So over the years, I've always encountered, you know, I've always seen a band pretty much like a football team. I'm not one of those guys who's going to be ringing you up to see how you're doing, or do you want to go out for a drink and stuff like that. Not part of my personality. All I really think about is the music, and are the people within the band the optimal players, and take it as seriously as I do. So that's always been a sticking point for many people that I've worked with, until we got Skin together. And then I had 4 individuals, including myself, who were equally committed, and everything else was secondary. So the point was, when we mixed the album, we did one song where the singer was there, and then I was left to do the rest of the mixing. And then when I came back and played the mixes, he basically said, well, I don't like these mixes, I need them mixed again. And that was like the beginning of the end, you know. It was just kind of, that's not how a band needs to be run. So that fell apart very quickly, and then out of the ashes of Jagged Edge came Skin. So my point being is, everything was a very necessary stepping stone to form, you know, ultimately the failures of Jagged Edge went on to be the successes of Skin. And the reason for that is, it taught me the type of personalities that you needed to work with in order to create anything successful. So even though You Don't Love Me is a song that I'm incredibly proud of, and the fact that it's still played today is incredible to me. You had musicians who didn't get on with each other, still a great song existed. And I'm not really too bothered about relationships with other musicians. The most important thing to me is there a piece of art that lives on beyond the normal petty ego stuff that goes on with bands? And is someone still going to be listening to it? So while Jagged Edge was not a successful band, its failure led to the success of Skin, and it's proof that people who don't necessarily get on with each other can still create a piece of art that lives on. So hopefully that gives you an insight into the song and a little bit into the music industry. And until the next time, take care. Bye bye.